mentioning there was already a bank run when you got elected, because some people will say that Greece was recovering in 2014 and it was only kind of you coming in and picking a fight with the creditors that then sort of made the problems worse again.
But I can say that the earth is flat. It's just as credible.
Okay.
Greece was fading. It's been fading since 2008. Just go to any data bank and look at Greek GDP, nominal GDP in euros. And you see that it fell in 2009, 2010, 11, 12, 13, 14. Every year it fell. What happened was, it was a real GDP growth in 2014. But you know why? Because real GDP, as you know, is a ratio. GDP in euros, nominal GDP, divided by an index of prices. What happened in 2014 was the prices were falling faster than incomes. And therefore, the ratio was going up because the denominator was falling faster than the numerator. But that is not a sign of recovery. That is a sign of a huge depression. When prices fall faster than incomes after 6 years of a decline in incomes, you are in the depths of depression. And to have the international press saying, oh, Greece was recovering when these people walked into government, this is just absurd. And you know what? It's also offensive to the Greek people. The Greek people didn't want to elect us. They did not suddenly become left-wing. I mean, we were a party of 4%, and then we went to 40%. Why did that happen? Because the Greeks could see that nothing was working. The people of Greece are much wiser than foreign correspondents, except, of course, you.
Of course.
They chose us because what we said made sense, and there was no recovery. The recovery was Greek recovery, as they used to call it, the Greek success story, was just adding insult to the injury of the Greeks.
So who's the bad guy in this story? Because you are quite understanding. You get along with George Osborne, the British Finance Minister, even Wolfgang Schäuble, who was portrayed in the media as your arch enemy. You know, towards the end of the book, you get along, or sort of you have good discussions. Who's the bad guy?
No one.
No one.
I tried to write this book with a humanist perspective. When you watch an ancient Greek tragedy, Oedipus, who is the bad guy? There are no bad guys. Well, there are no bad guys. Everybody is trying to do their best. But that's the whole structure of a tragedy. The game is set up in such a way that even though everybody is trying to do their best, in the end everybody is contributing to a disaster.
So how do you change?
This was exactly how I tried to write this book. I have no doubt that Wolfgang Schäuble was trying to do his best. Christine Lagarde was trying to do her best. My Prime Minister was trying to do his best. But in the end, the game we play in Europe is bringing out the worst possible outcome for our people. And even powerful men like Wolfgang Schäuble, or women like Angela Merkel, in the end, they are caught in the trap of their own power and end up powerless. This is the stuff of true tragedy.
So how do you change Europe from being the stuff of true tragedy to something else?
By democratizing it.
Democratizing.
You see, democracy is not a luxury for the creditors. It's not something that's nice to have. The reason why democracy evolved, never perfectly and nowhere perfectly, is because it's the only way of managing a crisis. You see, during the good times, you don't need democracy. You can have a cartel structure like Europe always did. Europe is a cartel, really, of heavy industry. That's how it started. Remember, it was the economic community of coal and steel, like OPEC. And then the other industries were co-opted, the agricultural sector through common agricultural policy. So when you have the United States of America minding the global shop and ensuring that there is growth internationally, which is what was going on between 1945 and 2008, really, in the global economy, and then you can have an undemocratic European Union expanding, and everybody's relatively dissatisfied and relatively happy at the same time. And the whole thing is sustainable. I mentioned OPEC. When is OPEC about to crash? When prices come down. Yeah. During the bad times, cartels cannot handle the distribution of burdens and losses. Similarly, it is now, since the crisis began, that you can see that the European Union is desperately in need of more democracy because it cannot handle the distribution and redistribution of burdens. That's why we need democracy and transparency. It is absurd that the people out there do not know what their representatives are saying on their behalf behind closed doors.
And that's why you were secretly recording the Eurogroup meetings under the table with your cell phone?
No, that's not why I was doing it. I was doing it for even better reasons than that. After my first Eurogroup, which lasted 10.5 hours, I exited that Eurogroup meeting with a head that was spinning from fatigue, from confusion, from exhaustion. Now, I consider myself to be, and I was, a representative of the Greek people and the Greek government in there. The future of the nation depended on what was being said during that meeting. I was threatened by the president of the Eurogroup with bank closures on that meeting, during that very, very first meeting. Now, I had a responsibility towards my prime minister, my cabinet, my parliament, and the Greek people to come out and answer questions as to what was said in there. And I remember, once the press conference was finished, I asked my secretary for a copy of the transcripts, of the minutes. And she called me 10 minutes later saying, Minister, I asked the Secretariat and there are no minutes.
So it was for your own memory?
Of course it was for my own memory. I had a duty to be able to report to Parliament. Parliamentarians would ask me, this is what happens in democracy. They said to you, so what did Schäuble say to you when you said that? And what was the precise wording of what you said to Schäuble when it is a question of national survival for a place like Greece? And I had no idea. I would have to say, you know what, I can't really remember. I have a hazy recollection because I was tired. So after that, I started recording. And then, once the Brussels correspondence began to spread huge lies about what was said to me, about what I said in meetings, recording my conversations was the only defense against this kind of toxic lies.
And it then became this book as well. Thank you.
You're most welcome.